Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, Dr. Shabazian. And we now move south of the border, where we will hear from Dr. Frank Weichold, who is the Director of Critical Path, and I'm also pleased to say the Regulatory Science Initiative. That's the first time I've actually seen regulatory science in somebody's job description, so it shows that there's quite a lot happening in the regulatory science field, in that somebody has this as part of their official duties. So this means that I think we're in for an exciting presentation, Frank. So I'll hand over to you right now, and let's hear what you have to say from the FDA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Donnelly, for the kind introduction. Thank you, my colleagues from the regulatory agencies, and thank you, of course, Clinam and Clinam organizers, and particularly Beat Löffler, who was very kind to FDA, in particular because we had already the opportunity in 4 presentations to present the approaches and the views of FDA in the context, particularly, of course, nano and nanomedicines. As such, I promised you, I guess, past year and maybe even the year before, to tell you more about outreach and translational space. And I'm also making reference to the IPRF, which I think plays a very important role. And Marisa has specifically referenced the interactions. I think we have made solid progress. We will continue to push into the translational space, just as Clinam does. I think what we know from the number of research publications and new technologies related to nano, that there's a lot going on, and yet it does not necessarily translate into products. So I think we can do better in the translational space, and that's one of the forums, I think, Clinam, where we have the opportunity to do so. But we also want to build preparedness in the context of complex issues, not to talk about the complexity of nano-related or non-biologic complex drugs. And I think we need to leverage science, collaborations, and alliances. In that context, we believe that the promotion of consensus standards that are meaningful to speed up that process in translation and make it more predictable and build reasonable tools for that is an important component. But we also think that training and education in that context and harmonization in that area is a critical element that we need to keep in our mind, and particularly from the regulatory agencies. I think we can do a lot to facilitate, coordinate, and streamline that, but also to encourage academic agencies, academic institutions to focus on this area. Now, one of the opportunities in this context to introduce the experiment, I would call it, of FDA Centers of Excellence in Regulatory Science and Innovation is we realize as an agency, first of all, we don't have expertise in all areas. It's very important to leverage capacity of the leading academic institutions, but we also think that academic institutions are a platform for much more. Currently, we have 4 partners that we engage with, 4 centers of excellence: University of Maryland, Georgetown University, Johns Hopkins University, University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, and Stanford University. Now, the overall goals are described here. It's a no-brainer that we want to strengthen our research platform. We strive for scientific excellence, including academic institutions, better science, better training, better networking. And we engage into specific collaborative efforts that are not just single grants. Those are strategic alliances, and we have in mind to build a network that will remain in place for many years, hopefully decades, and will enable us to solve problems together. I described just the background, so I'm not going to spend my time on it because it would take away from our discussion time. What we are using for that is an HHS grants mechanism, but it's actually more a cooperative agreement, and in a sense there are modular grants underneath. The priorities are set through discussions with an internal FDA-wide cross-center steering committee. And of course, we pay a lot of attention to managing the program, project management oversight, specifically from the Office of Commissioner. I think it's critical because when we engage with academicians, traditionally, academicians know when they get a grant from some federal funding institution like the NIH, it is giving them resources to do research that they are focused on and that they are specifically interested in or have a history in. We take the opportunity to guide that research into specific directions that are relevant for the agency. But actually, I'll allude to this later. So in the research collaborations, we establish research projects. We put seed fundings into it, which enables us to, within actually 2 weeks, and a concept paper that is presented from either an entity within FDA or from any of the academic institutions. And in that context, the academic institutions are a platform for discussion. So any stakeholder actually can approach the academic institution, the CERSI, to bring issues up that then can be prioritized, and we can start research projects in a very nimble way. We were somewhat resourceful to make this a grant system that where we can add supplements from the centers, because many of you know who have interacted with the agency that the agency is not a monolithic structure, and similarly the finance system of the agency is not monolithic, so the centers have very independent budgets, and yet we want to leverage that into this grants platform. There is information on the web that you can look up. Here I'm giving you some examples of research priority areas. And I'm not going to take the time to read through this because the slides are available to you, but this is kind of an inspiration for you to understand what we are currently, or what we have done in the past couple of years, and what the current priorities look like. And you can imagine that we are very grateful that we can leverage the expertise of this research collaborative system. So lectures, CERSI Workshops, again here, just a taste for the different workshops that we conducted with the different centers of excellence. Certainly that includes also an exchange program for scientists and visiting scientists, sabbaticals, fellowships. Some of you may have experienced that it's not so simple with a regulatory agency because of considerations for perception of conflict of interest and the like. But I think we found some ways to do that. Here I'm just highlighting some of the focus areas in our collaboration with the Center of Excellence in California, which includes, as I said, UCSF and Stanford. So preclinical safety, clinical trials and evaluation, big data, including natural language processing, data mining, and so on. We leverage the unique geographic area also to interact with FDA's Office of Regulatory Science field laboratories. Some of you know that, of course, in our regulatory responsibility, we have to have representation on all import places and harbors, airports, and so on. But we also have regional labs that do inspections and analyze samples. And as such, the Centers of Excellence are an opportunity to link those regional laboratories with the academic institutions. Some of the research projects here are listed specifically, and the list goes on, but in the interest of time, I'm not going through this again. This is reference material for you. In terms of academic education, the California Center of Excellence has an online professional certificate program. Specifically, I would like to point out there is some strength in pharmacovigilance and metrology. Metrology actually even leverages the capacity of the National Institutes for Standards, NIST, because there is a local site in California, and they have specialized in metrology. So the other, or one of the other 4 centers of excellence is Johns Hopkins University. Again, we leverage the strengths of the academic institution. Here are some examples for collaborative projects. And this is a list of the academic coursework and certificates, fellowships, and scholarships that the Center of Excellence, in conjunction with the agency, has established. University of Maryland, again, we are leveraging the region. As you know, we are very closely localized, co-located with the University of Maryland College Park campus. We mitigate some of the challenges that the meeting room capacity has, but it's going beyond that. We have a very deeply rooted collaborative research program in some of these research areas highlighted here. And certainly we have academic programs like Masters in Engineering, Masters in Regulatory Science, and just a couple of months ago, actually, we graduated the first class of about 40 graduates, international graduates, in that Masters in Regulatory Science program from University of Baltimore, University of Maryland at Baltimore. So there are also innovation awards that stimulate interaction of students. We believe students are a very important resource in research and a capacity that we should leverage. But we also should interest students early on to focus on the problems and opportunities that regulatory agencies have in their rather complex responsibilities. Again, here's some lectures and workshops listed for your reference. The fourth center is Georgetown University, and similarly here, there are some research priority areas where we interact in particular. In the future, we also anticipate to leverage the law school of Georgetown University, because if an agency makes policies, it is also good to have good contact to lawyers who can do a lot of research to guide and perhaps support the agency in that aspect. Again, here are the academic accomplishments of this center, including Masters in Regulatory Science, Professional Development, and Fellowships, and some of the research priority areas that we have engaged into including bioinformatics, vaccine safety, surveillance system that is integrated now with CBER and interacts with the CEDAR databases as well, research on data sharing, and some questions on health literacy and minority engagement into research. So we now have an annual application for the CERSI program. It is not restricted to US institutions. We think it's an opportunity to address capacity needs that the agency has. We anticipate that we can synchronize the network. We build capacity. We leverage resources that the academic institutions have. There is a lot of in-kind contribution, but we also included the opportunity that other funding sources can be channeled towards the centers of excellence that can be government or non-government funding. And now, as I mentioned, we have the annual opportunity to renew, and new applicants can engage into this network. So what we are interested in is obviously dialogue, perhaps a change in culture, forming strategic alliances. Those academic centers help us in our research prioritization and direction, because they're also a platform for communication where we learn about the challenges and issues. They form a basis for perhaps new ways to solve problems in context with the stakeholders. And last but not least, perhaps even conflict mitigation, harmonization, consensus, and standardization. But it's also a platform to exchange information, train and educate the FDA workforce and national and international professional development. So one of the challenges that we have, I think, is we need to create a critical mass. We need to leverage the nimbleness of this platform. We would like to create a seamless capacity with the academic centers to focus on regulatory science and public outreach that is national and international. And some of you may be aware, the agency sometimes gets reviewed by the Government Accountability Office. And one of the criticism in the past has been that the agency needs to establish a more robust strategic science planning, and as such we hope that we can leverage the academic centers in that context as well. With that, I thank you very much.